Welcome, and this is the Grassroots Education and Entertainment Network, your number one source of information, education, and entertainment. For honest, responsible, and dependable information, we stand supreme. To stay focused, inspired, and relaxed, choose green.
Ekabo, and welcome to the Ifa Orisa Tradition Community Discussion. And as usual, I would open with the Iba for today's program. Openi fun Olorun, Olodumare Oba Ajiki, Mojilone, Mowogumeriaye, Iba Ila Orun, Iba Iwo Orun, Iba Ariwa, Iba Gusu, Iba Oba Igbalye, Iba Orun Oke, Iba Baba, Iba Yeye, Iba Atiwo Orun, Iba She Igungun Kiki Igungun, Iba She Ori, Ori Inu, Ipori Atiwo Orun, Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. And as usual, we are going to do a lesson, and it is a continuation of last week's lesson, which was given from the reading of Chief Fela Suwandi, where he explained the name Olorun, the meaning of the name Olorun, and most of the hierarchy of Orun. This week, we will continue to read from that lesson. All right. We have, therefore, in the Yoruba system, Olorun, Elida, and Oludumare of the three. Oludumare is the least rarefied being. He is still neither matter nor conditioned by matter. He is the root of that which eventually becomes matter, the root of that which eventually becomes form. We may perhaps regard him as the germ from which the principle of form and matter subsequently develops. He is pure spirit, but so near to manifestation that he enters into virtually every aspect of manifestation, of manifested life. Not because he is the supreme God, which he is not, because he may be linked to the permanent secretary of a minister of state in whom the minister places absolute confidence and who deals with the general public on behalf of the minister. One does not upset such a permanent secretary and expect the minister to have much time for one. Oludumare is virtually important because of this sort of relationship with Olorun, the supreme deity, but also because these three names represent the state of manifestation of that which in every system, like that of the Yoruba, is forever nameless, the it from which even the supreme deity Olorun derives, of which it has been said in another system. I am without beginning and without end, older than night and day, younger than the babe newborn, brighter than the light, darker than the darkness, beyond all things and creatures, yet fixed in the heart of everyone. From me the shining world flows forth. To me all at last returns, yet to me neither men nor angels may draw nigh. For I am known only to myself. Ever the same is my innermost being, absolutely one, complete, whole, perfect, always itself, eternal, infinite, ultimate, formless, invisible, changeless. Of all existences, I am the source, the continuation, and the end. I am the germ, I am the growth, I am the decay. All things and creatures I send forth, I support them while yet they stand without. And when the dream of separation ends, I cause their return unto myself. Apart from me, there is neither wisdom nor knowledge, nor understanding. Into every state of knowledge do I enter, into false knowledge as well as into true, so that I am not less the ignorance of the deluded than the wisdom of the sage. For what thou callest ignorance and folly is my pure knowing imperfectly expressed through an uncompleted image of my divine perfection. Mine is the healing influence flowing down from consecrated hands. Mine, the venom of the adder's fang. Nothing falleth but by me, and in whatsoever riseth, mine is the power that lifteth up. Before all worlds, I was in all worlds. I am. And when worlds are but a memory, I shall be. All right? Of the same it is also said, from my substance all things derive their substance, and all that had form is built from my fourfold elemental manifestation. Four are the subtle principles which the wise conceal from the uninitiated by the name fire, water, air, earth, in endless variety of mixture and proportion directed by my will. These mingle together for the production of forms. They are transmutations of a single essence. From their mingling are brought forth all things. It is the writer's currently held view that in the Yoruba system, Olorun correlates with fire, Eleda correlates with air, Olodumare correlates with water, and Ofun Yepa correlates with earth. The single essence from which they all derive is the unnamed and unnameable it. These same oral traditions state categorically that the permuted name of Olorun, such as Olorun Elemi, Olorun Alanu, etc., were imported by the Yoruba converts and had no place in the traditional system per se. Iduo's Olodumare as one who is supreme, superlatively great, incomparable, and unsurpassable in majesty, excellent in attributes, stable, unchanging, constant, reliable, may apply to the concept of Olodumare in Yoruba. Christianity. It simply does not belong in Yoruba traditional system where we find this stanza cited by Lejadu. Ojú ẹ̀pọ̀n Olódùmarè, ojú ẹ̀pọ̀n Ọ̀rúnmìlà, Olódùmarè ní kí Ọ̀rúnmìlà rúbọ, Ọ̀rúnmìlà ní kí Olódùmarè náà rúbọ ké, ẹ̀wọ̀n jùmọ̀ ya aṣọ́bẹ̀lẹ̀kì ìranlá kòkòà àti ògbò ànlá líìbọ̀ fún ara wọn, àwọn méjèèjì bọ ẹbọ ẹ̀wọ̀n rúbọ. Briefly, Olódùmarè was in dire straits. Ọ̀rúnmìlà was in dire straits. Olódùmarè told Ọ̀rúnmìlà to offer sacrifice. Ọ̀rúnmìlà said Olódùmarè too should offer sacrifice. Each divined for the other. Each sacrificed. Lejadu adds a footnote to say that this stanza from Agiogbe was one of which Babalawo stood in great dread. It was with difficulties he was able to persuade his Babalawo to recite the stanza, and even Lejadu was led into a corner and the stanza recited by the Babalawo's mouth to air. The story given by Lejadu may be briefly summed up as follows. Oludumare and Orunmila were out walking one day. They suddenly fell into a deep pit from which, try as they would, they could not get out. They were there for days until the monkey, which is Idu in Yoruba, happened to discover them there. He went, collected some fruits, which he threw to them. They ate, regained strength to climb out, but were both still so shaken by their experience that they went and shut themselves up in heaven, and no one could get them to come out except Idu, who threatened to spill the beans about the discomfiture he had found them in, at which both hastily emerged from their hiding place. Here is no picture of Oludumare as conceived by Adoro, but we cannot rewrite the Odu corpus to satisfy any author, and they must be our ultimate point of reference. We should now consider, as briefly as possible, Ela, Orisha, and Ile-Ife for the story of Ela. We turn exclusively to Chief Fabuemi Ajanuku, the Araba of Eko, who several years back was Mr. Ajanaku, as Mr. Ajanaku prepared and presented a script on Ela for Yoruba life in Yoruba. Herein under is the detailed summary in English of the Yoruba text. When Olodumare ordered Ajalamo to mold man, he also ordered Ela to supervise Ajalamo's work. This infuriated Eshu, to whom Ela was junior, as Eshu thought he had been bypassed in favor of a junior. Eshu and his followers then levied war against Ela on a day known as Kwejo Eti, the day of attempting the impossible. Eshu lost, and he and his followers were chucked out of heaven. Kwejo Eti correspond to our Friday. With Eshu removed, Ela became the senior of all heavenly powers, and next only to Olodumare. Then Olodumare instructed Ela to go down to earth to put things in order. At that time, the whole earth was one vast mess of water and sky with chaos everywhere. Eshu got to know of this plan, and he and his followers took three alternative decisions: either to prevent Ela from gaining a foothold on earth, or failing that, B, to prevent Ela from carrying out Olodumare's instruction, or failing that, C, to ensure that Ela was unable to return to heaven to report back to Olodumare. This is known as the Day of the Three Tries. Kyojo Abameta correspond to our Saturday. Ela and his followers descended to earth on Ojo Aiku, the day of not dying or of survival, corresponding to our Sunday, presumably implying that Eshu was unable to prevent Ela's descent. Anything in parentheses like this are the writer's comments for which he alone is responsible. On the day of Ela's descent, the whole earth was convulsed by terrible upheavals. Arriving on earth, Ela first had to break Eshu's power. Terrible battles followed, and the goddess Aje was sent down by Olodumare from heaven to assist Ela against Eshu. Hence, the day is known as Ojo Aje, or Aje's Day. It corresponds to our Monday. Ela gained a decisive victory over Eshu by establishing order. Thus, the day is known as Ojobo, the day of the return of things to normal, or the day of restoration, corresponding to our Thursday. Ela then stayed on earth for 2 more days: Friday, Kujoeti, and Saturday, Kujo Abameta, and returned to heaven on the same day he descended from heaven. That is Ojo Aiku, Ojo Aiku, which is Sunday. Hence, the Yoruba believe that every person dies on the day of the week he was born, and that where this is not so, either the person died on somebody else's day as an unconscious substitute, or that he had actually died on the day of his birth, but had enough energy left in him to last out a little longer before collapsing altogether. For some time, things went on fine. Mankind was fruitful and multiplied, and the earth was populated. Order was everywhere. When Eshu saw this, he called his followers together and was able to attract some of mankind to his band of followers. Trouble began again. Women became barren. Those with child had miscarriages or difficult births. The sick remained sick, and similar wicked things were done by Eshu and his followers. Again, Olodumare instructed Ela to go down to earth to restore order, but this time to take on human flesh. In the original script, two stanzas of Ifa, one from Ejiogbe and the other from Irosun Atari, were quoted in connection with this event. There seemed no need to quote them here due to the space consideration. This was the first of 6 times that Ela came to the earth as a human being, making 7 times in all, if we include his very first visit as a great spirit Ela, as recounted above. Oludumare always sent him as Orunmila to the particular place where there was greatest need. He had different parents each time. On one of the incantations, his father was Upati, his mother was Ogidi, and his place of birth was Okeitashe. Ela slash Orunmila was not the only one with multiple incarnations. The same pattern holds for Orun and several of the Iromoles who took on human flesh and lived among men. Among them are the 16 Iromoles, which we know today as the 16 Odu Ifa. Ofun, Yepa, Ogbe, Oyeku, Iwori, Odi, Irosun, Owori, Obara, Okara, Ogunda, Osa, Ika, Oturapan, Otura, Irite, and Oshe. This order is not universally followed throughout Yorubaland. Nevertheless, when the Iromoles became human beings on earth, then each carried twice its original name. Thus, Ogbe became Eji Ogbe, or twice Ogbe. Oyeku became Oyeku Meji, or twice Oyeku, and so on. Ofun Yepa became Orangun Meji, Oragu Meji, and occupied the 16th position, having yielded the first position of Eji Ogbe. The cause of this is related to another stanza of Ifa from A.G. Ogbe. All right, the source of this was Arsada. And here we take our leave of the Yoruba script by Chief Ajanaku, and we quote A.G. Ogbe's stanza relating to the first time the 16 Iromoles came to earth as humans, roughly summed up as the following in English. The oracle was consulted on behalf of the 16 Imoles, or by the 16 Iromoles, when they were due to come down to earth. They inquired whether they would be able to stay on earth. They were told to offer sacrifice. Ejiogbe was the only one who did as instructed. Ofunmeji Yepa was the first Oromole. He was senior to be sent down to earth. He returned to heaven to report that it was impossible to stay on earth, for it was all dark and one vast mass of water. Then Olodumare gave Ejiogbe authority to set things right on earth. When Ejiogbe and his followers arrived on earth, the very first thing Ejiogbe did was to command that there be light, and there was light. He commanded the water to divide into two, for one part to go upwards and the other half to go downwards, and the sky became visible. He also commanded the water on the ground to let dry land appear. When dry land appeared, grass began to grow, and all kinds of animals began to make their appearances according to the command of Ejiogbe. Ofunmeji Yepa had fully expected Ejiogbe to return to heaven with the mission unaccomplished. But as time went on and he did not hear nor see anything of Ejiogbe, he, Ofunmeji Yepa, thought he would go down and see what was happening. When he arrived on earth, he found Ejiogbe and his followers comfortably seated. He ordered Ejiogbe to get up so that he, Ofunmeji, the senior Yepa, could sit down. But Ejiogbe answered him not a word. Thus, Ejiogbe became the most senior of the Imoles and Oragun Meiji, the new name for Ofun Meiji, became the last in the order of seniority. All right. So for people who always ask that question, how did Eji Ogbe become first when Ofun Meiji Yepa was senior in Orun? This just explained that particular change. A point that might perhaps be mentioned here is that when Oludumare sent Ela to earth as spirit in the story of Ela above, there was no consulting of the oracle. Authority and power was given directly to Ela by Oludumare. When, however, Ela first incarnated as Orunmila in A.G. Ogbe's stanza, referred to the story of Ela above, but not quoted, the oracle was consulted. Tradition has it that it was Ela on his first and only mission on earth as spirit who taught mankind how to divine using 16 ivory counters. As we see from the above story of the first incarnation of the 16 Iromoles, the oracle was again consulted. Thus, we may rightly conclude that divination as part of the system is of great antiquity, initially taught by Ela. Oral traditions also has it, as written, understand it, that there are 16 Iromoles who were part of Ela's followers when he came to battle with Eshu and replace chaos with order. Furthermore, that they also form part of Orunmila's follower at each incarnation. In the above story about A.G. Ogbe and Ofun Yepa, we see them in action independently, or Ela Orunmila. Oral tradition aver that there are two Elas, Ela Awoye, whom we have been considering, and Ela Iwori, who is not of the same stature as Ela Awoye, and that the two are not to be confused. Similarly, there are two Eshus, Eshu Ibita, the great spirit whom we have been considering in the story of Ela, and Eshu Lalu, the son of a chief of Oloja, and that these two Eshus should not be confused one with the other. We are concerned here, however, with Ela. All right, and that ends the reading of this article on Olorun by on Ifa by Chief Fela Sowande. All right, so that would end the reading for or the completion of that particular very interesting lesson. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the educational opportunities that is available for persons who are interested in learning more about Ifa or Ifa Orisa teachings. The African indigenous tradition community have Ifa Orisa classes each Tuesday at 5 p.m. at the Barataria Community Center on 6th Avenue, opposite the recreation ground, where there are several instructors. Awo Ifawole, myself, and there are also other experienced elders who would also be available to teach. All right. Beside those classes, we also have streams such as this one. Today's show is called the Ifa Orisha Tradition Community Discussions, which is held every Friday at 6:30. We also have on Sunday the traditional herbal health show at 5 p.m. and on a Wednesday we have the Ifa Bemero show, which teaches the basics of Ifa. Beside these live streams, we also have virtual classes every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. for persons interested in astrology, and on a Friday at 5 p.m. for individuals who are interested in etymology. There are no classes currently. However, once advertised and registration is done, classes would be beginning. All right. Now, beside this stream on this particular green network, all of these streams are available on several Facebook platforms. I'm going to share with you several of the platforms from which you can actually view this stream together with other streams that we have. The streams are available on the Ifa Orisa Tradition Discussion Group of Trinidad and Tobago, the Grassroots Education and Entertainment Network, which is the host, the Ifa Bemero Home of Ifa Orisa Tradition, the Ifa Orisa Institute of Sacred and Divine Science, the Ifa Orisa Community Congress, the Traditional Herbal Health Network International, the Ifa Orisa Tradition Teaching Group, the Orisa Baptist Small and Medium Business Alliance, as well as on the Orisa Baptist Teaching Moments International, and last but not least, on the Iantes Diasporic Ventures. We also available on the African Tradition Community. All right. So with that, I would like to remind folks to like, share, and subscribe. As well as at the end of this video, there is going to be another video coming up. Please look at that stream. And with that, I would like to say Oda Bo and see you next week.